He didn't hesitate. "This is the failure of our family," my brother said, loud enough for the whole room, smiling like he'd practiced it. "If you've ever been quietly disrespected by the people who should have stood by you, don't look away. This story was written for you. Stay with me until the very end." I felt the words land sharp but familiar. I kept my face calm, even softened my mouth into something that looked like acceptance. Inside, I noted the exact moment the room shifted. Chair stilled. Forks paused midair. Someone cleared their throat too late. I had learned long ago that silence unsettles people more than anger. I let mine do the work. The engagement party was already winding down. It was just after 7, the kind of early evening where the light through the restaurant windows turns yellow and tired. The place smelled like reheated chicken and cheap wine. Balloons sagged near the ceiling. None of it mattered, yet I noticed every detail as if my mind needed anchors to keep from drifting somewhere dangerous. My parents didn't defend me. My mother's lips tightened. My father stared at his plate like it held instructions he couldn't read. That hurt more than the comment itself. Still, I nodded slightly as if my brother had simply introduced me with the wrong job title. Years of being underestimated had taught me how to disappear in plain sight. Then there was his boss. He hadn't spoken yet. He stood near the end of the table, jacket still on, drink untouched. He was watching. Not with pity, not with amusement. With curiosity. That caught my attention. People usually look away when they think they've figured you out. He hadn't. My brother waited. I could feel it. He expected something from me. A reaction. A defense. Maybe even tears. He thrived on proof that he was right about me. I gave him nothing. I folded my napkin, careful and neat, like this was just another awkward family moment that would pass. A server brushed past, apologizing under her breath, nearly knocking over a glass. Red wine sloshed dangerously close to my sleeve but didn't spill. I took that as a sign, though I couldn't have said of what. Small escapes matter when everything else feels trapped. "You okay?" my sister-in-law whispered, not meeting my eyes. Her hand hovered, never quite touching my arm. Concern mixed with relief. She was glad it wasn't her being offered up tonight. I smiled at her and said, "Of course." The lie came out smooth. That surprised me. My brother laughed, a short, sharp sound. "I'm just being honest," he said, glancing around for approval. He got a few weak smiles. Honesty, I'd learned, is often just cruelty wearing a clean name. That's when his boss finally spoke. "Interesting," he said slowly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "You have." He looked directly at me, not my brother. The question hung unfinished, deliberate. I felt something tighten behind my ribs. I met his eyes. For a second I considered answering. Saying my name. Saying more. Instead I held the pause. I'd earned that pause. Somewhere deep in my purse my phone vibrated once. A message I didn't check. I already knew who it was from. "I'm his older sister," I said evenly. "That's all that matters tonight." My brother frowned. He didn't like that. He liked labels. Failure. Success. Simple words that kept him comfortable. The room waited again. I could sense it leaning toward a moment it didn't yet understand. The boss nodded slowly. "Of course," he said. But his eyes told a different story. He was filing something away. My mother finally spoke. "Let's not make a scene," she said to me as if I had. That settled it. I stood up, smoothing my jacket, my movements unhurried. The chair scraped louder than I expected. "I should go," I said. My brother opened his mouth, maybe to stop me, maybe to finish what he'd started. I turned to face him fully then. Up close, I could see the flicker of uncertainty cross his face. "Congratulations," I said quietly. The room held its breath, and I realized this moment would follow all of us longer than the music, the food, or the smiles ever could. He didn't hear the warning in it. But someone else did. I felt it the moment I stepped outside. The quiet after humiliation has a sound of its own. The restaurant door closed behind me, muting the music, the laughter, the pretending. The evening air was cool, damp with the promise of rain. I stood there longer than necessary, keys in my hand, letting my pulse settle back into something steady and useful. The parking lot lights flickered on one by one. A couple argued softly near a sedan. Somewhere a car alarm chirped and stopped. Ordinary life carried on, indifferent to the small disaster I'd just walked away from. I preferred it that way. Drama feeds on witnesses. I was done feeding anyone. My phone vibrated again. I didn't look right away. I already knew it wasn't family. Family waits, then rewrites the story later. This message was from someone who paid attention to timing. I slid into my car, closed the door, and only then checked the screen. One line. Are you all right? No name. There didn't need to be one. I started the engine but didn't drive. My hands rested on the steering wheel, veins raised, knuckles calm. I thought about my mother's voice telling me not to make a scene. About my brother's smile when he said my name like it was a verdict. About the boss's unfinished sentence. Interesting, Yev. The words repeated, not as an insult but as a door left open. I typed back slowly. I'm fine. Then after a pause, we should talk soon. The reply came faster than I expected. I was hoping you'd say that. I turned the phone face down. Hope can be dangerous. Still, I allowed myself a breath. The drive home took 15 minutes. Every red light felt longer than usual. I passed streets I'd driven 1,000 times, but tonight they looked different, stripped of familiarity. When I pulled into my driveway, my neighbor waved from her porch. I waved back, polite, distant. I wasn't ready for witnesses yet. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old books. I kicked off my shoes and stood in the entryway listening to the quiet. No television. No voices telling me who I was supposed to be. I loosened my jacket and hung it carefully, the way I always did. Control lives in small habits. I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. My reflection in the dark window surprised me. I looked older than I felt. Or maybe I'd finally caught up to myself. Either way, I didn't look broken. That mattered. The phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister-in-law. I'm sorry, she wrote. No explanation. No defense. Just those 2 words. I stared at them for a long moment, then set the phone down without replying. Apologies offered too late often ask more than they give. I opened the drawer beneath the table and pulled out a slim folder. It wasn't locked away. It never had been. Inside were papers I hadn't touched in years, edges softened with age. Notes. Copies. Proof. Things people forget you still have when they've already decided you're harmless. I didn't open it yet. I just placed my hand on top, grounding myself. A memory surfaced then, not of tonight but of another room, another table decades earlier. Being talked over. Being dismissed. Promised things that never came. I'd survived that by learning patience. By watching patterns. By knowing when to wait and when to move. Tonight felt like one of those moments, though the shape of it was still unclear. The phone rang. Not a message. A call. I answered on the 3rd ring. I saw what happened, the voice said. Calm. Measured. No sympathy in it, and I appreciated that. You handled it well. So I've been told, I replied. Silence stretched between us, comfortable, loaded. Then he said, you still have leverage. More than they think. I closed my eyes. They always think that, I said. We can discuss options, he continued. No rush. But the window is open. I looked at the folder again, at the quiet house, at the version of myself my brother had tried to leave behind in that restaurant. Yes, I said finally. It is. After the call ended, I didn't move for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast and leaves ash. What I felt was colder. Clearer. The kind of feeling that doesn't demand attention but changes outcomes all the same. I washed the glass, dried it, and placed it back in the cabinet. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went upstairs, already aware that walking away hadn't ended anything at all. It had only shifted where the weight now rested. I woke before dawn the next morning, not with panic, but with a strange steadiness that surprised me. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock I'd owned longer than my marriage. I made coffee and stood at the counter while it brewed, breathing in the bitterness. My phone sat nearby, silent. I didn't need it to ring to know things were already moving. Some changes happen loudly. Others slide into place while people are still congratulating themselves. By mid-morning, I was sorting through papers at the dining table. Nothing dramatic. Old folders. Notes written in my own careful handwriting. I found myself smiling at the woman I'd been back then. Cautious, yes, but thorough. She had prepared for outcomes she'd never been given credit for imagining. Around noon, I drove across town for groceries. The store was crowded with retirees and young parents, everyone moving slowly, politely. At the checkout, I ran into a former coworker. She looked startled, then curious. I heard your brother's doing well, she said as if testing something. I nodded and wished her well. I didn't correct her. Let assumptions do their quiet work. That afternoon an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. No greeting. Just an attachment and a single sentence asking if I could review it when convenient. I opened the document, heart steady, eyes sharp. Numbers told stories if you let them. This one was messy. Small errors. Patterns repeating. Not enough to alarm anyone yet. Enough to matter later. I took a break, stepped outside and sat on the porch. The air smelled like cut grass and warm pavement. A delivery truck rumbled past. I thought about how often power is mistaken for volume. My brother had always needed to be heard. I had learned to listen. The phone rang in the early evening. This time it was my mother. Her voice was careful, strained. Your brother's been under a lot of pressure, she said. I pictured her pacing the kitchen, choosing words like tools she no longer trusted. I told her I understood. Which was true. Understanding doesn't always come with forgiveness. After dinner I spread the papers out again. I followed threads, traced connections. Nothing illegal yet. Nothing obvious. But the structure was brittle. Too many shortcuts. Too much confidence. I wondered who had taught my brother that confidence alone could hold things up. A message came through, brief and precise, pointing out a detail I'd noticed myself. I replied just as briefly. We were speaking a shared language now. No emotion in it. Just clarity. That felt new. And oddly comforting. Later, as the sky darkened, I sat back and rubbed my hands together, feeling the ache in my knuckles. Age makes itself known in small ways. So my mind felt sharp. Sharper than it had in years. As if being dismissed had cleared space. I thought of the restaurant again, not with pain but with distance. The look on the boss's face. The pause. The question left unfinished. Some people recognize imbalance before it tips. Others only notice after the fall. Before bed, I placed the documents back into their folder. I wasn't ready to act. Not yet. Timing mattered more than speed. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to the house settle. Somewhere else, meetings were being scheduled. Emails forwarded. Decisions nudged. No one was thinking about me. That was the point. The shift had already happened quietly, long before anyone thought to look for it. I drifted toward sleep, thinking about how often women my age are mistaken for finished stories. Past tense. I'd worn that assumption like a coat for years because it kept me warm enough. Now it felt heavy. Tomorrow would come whether I rushed it or not. I decided to let it arrive on my terms, quietly, while others kept mistaking stillness for surrender. That misunderstanding, I knew, would cost someone far more than it had ever cost me. In time, the balance would make itself clear. Tomorrow would come whether I rushed it or not, and when it did, I answered it by getting dressed and going back. I chose simple clothes. Nothing that invited comment. A neutral jacket, low shoes, hair pinned back the way I wore it when I needed to think clearly. I checked myself once in the mirror and felt an unexpected calm. Not confidence. Something firmer. Acceptance of what had to be done. The building sat where it always had, ordinary and unremarkable. Glass doors, dull carpet, the faint smell of cleaning solution and burnt coffee. I paused before going in, feeling the weight of years press lightly against my back. Then I stepped forward. No one stopped me. That was the first sign. Inside, a young receptionist looked up. She smiled automatically, then hesitated. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her tone shifted when I gave my name. Not recognition exactly. More like instruction received somewhere else. She picked up the phone without asking why I was there. While I waited, I noticed details I'd missed before. A framed mission statement with vague promises. A plant that hadn't been watered properly. The hum of tension beneath polite conversation. Places like this always reveal themselves if you slow down enough. The boss came out to meet me. He shook my hand, firm, deliberate. "Thank you for coming," he said. Not welcome. Not surprised. "Thank you." I followed him down a narrow hallway, the sound of our footsteps uneven. I could feel eyes on my back as doors cracked open, then closed again. We sat in a conference room that smelled faintly of markers and old paper. He gestured for me to take a seat. No one else was there yet. "This isn't a family visit," he said carefully. I appreciated that he named it first. "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm here." He studied me for a moment. You've been quiet, he said. People mistake that for disinterest. I smiled once. People often mistake it for safety, I said. He nodded like that confirmed something he'd already suspected. Others joined us. One by one. Faces I didn't know well but could read easily enough. Curiosity. Worry. Relief that someone else was now speaking. My brother wasn't among them. That absence felt intentional. I noted it without comment. Documents were passed around. I didn't rush to look at them. Letting people wait shifts power in small ways. When I did read, I asked simple questions. Practical ones. Nothing accusatory. Just clear. Each answer raised another question. The room grew quieter with every exchange. At one point, a man across the table cleared his throat. We weren't aware you were still involved, he said. The words still hung there, heavy with assumption. I met his eyes. I was never uninvolved, I said. I was underestimated. No anger. Just fact. The boss leaned back in his chair. That's becoming clear, he said. He didn't look at me when he added, some decisions were made without full information. I understood what he was offering. Distance. Plausible regret. I accepted it with a nod. Consequences don't require confession. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. I ignored it. Whatever it was could wait. This room needed my attention more. We discussed next steps. Reviews. Temporary changes. Nothing dramatic yet. But the air had shifted. People were recalculating. When the meeting ended, the boss walked me out. In the hallway, he lowered his voice. Your brother doesn't know you're here, he said. I stopped walking. He will, I said. But not from me. He looked relieved. That told me more than words. As I reached the exit, I caught my reflection in the glass. Older. Yes. Tired in places. But standing straighter than I had in years. I thought about how often I'd been asked to smooth things over, to keep peace, to remember my place. This time I hadn't come to belong. I'd come to account. Outside the air felt sharper. Honest. I took a slow breath and let it fill my lungs. I wasn't here as anyone's sister. I wasn't here to explain myself. I had returned as consequence, and even before the doors closed behind me, I could feel the weight of that settling into the building I'd just left. I walked to my car knowing the next sound I heard would not be footsteps following me but my phone. It rang before I reached the driver's seat. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Where are you? My brother demanded. No greeting. No confusion. Just anger sharpened by fear. I finished my meeting, I said. My voice surprised me. Steady. Unapologetic. What meeting? He snapped. I could hear movement on his end. Papers. Voices. Things no longer sitting where he expected them to be. The one you weren't invited to, I said. I opened the car door and sat, letting the familiar smell of worn leather settle me. You never asked what I was doing all these years. You just decided. There was a pause. A real one this time. You had no right, he said finally. I had every right, I answered. I just didn't need your permission. He laughed, brittle. You think you won? You embarrassed yourself in front of everyone. I closed my eyes. No, I said. You embarrassed yourself. I simply stopped protecting you from it. He started to speak again, but another voice cut in. Not loud. Controlled. The boss. We need you back here, he said to my brother. The call went silent. I drove home slowly. No rush. Traffic moved easily, like the city had made room for this moment. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the phone was quiet. I didn't check messages. I already knew what they would say. The next morning I was asked to return. This time everyone was present, including my brother. He didn't look at me when I entered. His hands were flat on the table, knuckles pale. I took the seat across from him. Not beside. Not above. Across. The boss spoke first. Careful. We've completed the review, he said. There are findings. He slid a document forward. My brother skimmed it faster and faster until he stopped. His jaw tightened. This isn't fair, he said, looking up. She's doing this. No, the boss replied. You did this. I watched my brother then. Really watched him. The way his shoulders sagged. The way he searched the room for support that wasn't coming. For the first time I didn't feel anger. I felt distance. Growth creates space. That space can feel cruel if you don't understand it. I'm not here to punish you, I said. Every head turned toward me. I'm here to correct what should have been addressed years ago. He finally looked at me. His eyes were wet. You always wanted this, he said. Accusation disguised as realization. I shook my head. I wanted respect. I settled for silence until silence was no longer useful. The decision was formal. Professional. His role was ended. Not dramatically. Cleanly. With documentation. With reasons no one could challenge. The room exhaled as if it had been holding its breath for years. Afterward my mother called. Her voice trembled. Did you have to be so hard? She asked. I wasn't hard, I said. I was honest. You taught me that once. I just finally listened. Days passed. The noise faded. I didn't celebrate. I reorganized my life. Cleared drawers. Donated things that no longer fit. The folder went back where it belonged. Closed. Finished. One afternoon I ran into my brother at the grocery store. He looked smaller. Not broken. Just ordinary. He nodded at me. I nodded back. No words. None were needed. I realized then the truth I hadn't been able to name before. I didn't destroy him. I didn't need to. I outgrew him. That night I sat on my porch as the sun went down, the sky turning quiet shades of blue. For the first time in decades I wasn't explaining myself to anyone. I was simply present. Whole. And that, I knew, was the real revenge. Living forward without caring what was never mine to begin with. If this story made you feel seen, understood, or stronger, subscribe for more emotional stories about betrayal, resilience, and quiet revenge. You're not alone, and there are more stories waiting.